From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, August the 10th, the year 2016. And now, here they are, live with a big smile on their face.
And a song in our hearts.
And breathing on their own, Jim and Rich.
Smile on their face, a song in their hearts.
I don't know. There was something.
What was the line in the old Ray Stevens song?
Tarzan, you mean?
Yeah, smile on his face and a song and a bone in his nose. Oh.
Yeah, that was one of Ray Stevens' songs.
Yeah.
Why? How would you like to make your living doing that?
Boy. Hey, I got to show you this. I saw this.
Lay it on me.
This morning, and it brought back some memories here. I got to get to that.
Memories?
Yeah.
Memories
I saw a posting
Right,
here from Chet Kopic, and he was I don't know what he was ranting about. He doesn't like Pat Tomasulo on Channel 9 Sports, but he posted this billboard from an old Bob Luce show.
An old Bob Luce show?
Yes. They're an old Bob Luce card at the Hammond Civic Center, November 16th, in a year undetermined, but it was a Saturday. And I brought back some memories when I looked at it. The main event that night was Dick the Bruiser versus Mitsu Arakawa.
Oh, man. I just looked Mitsu up on the internet the other day. He was in my mind.
Oh, my God. And the featured tag team match for the night was Yukon Moose Cholak and Golden Boy Christie versus the Chain Gang, Jack and Frank Dillinger.
Ooh, geez, that's that had to be a real old one.
Yeah.
Now,
the other two bouts on the undercard that they show here was Johnny Case versus Luis Martinez and Randy Savage's dad, Angelo Poffo.
A local guy.
Versus Flores. I don't remember.
The guy doesn't have a name?
He's Flores.
He's just Flores.
He doesn't need it.
What a card that was.
He doesn't need a name.
I could just see Bob Luce calling up Angelo Poffo at the last minute. Hey, we got Flores for you to wrestle tonight. Well, who's Flores?
I don't know.
We'll get somebody.
He worked in a taco place in Hammond.
Listen, a buddy of mine and I, this had to be one of the last cards that Bob Luce promoted. This was in the 80s, and we were at the Odeum in Villa Park.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there. It was a good card because he had Marty Jannetty, who was Shawn Michaels' old partner. And they had Razor, he wasn't Razor Ramon, but Scott Hall.
In his early days, then?
No.
Was it?
I mean, he was, I don't know, he must have been picking up maybe some extra money.
Okay,
he was,
maybe.
Both of those guys had already been in the
they'd
WWE.
already been in the WWE.
And so we're sitting there, and this little kid is sitting next to us. So one of the matches, the guy's name was Earthquake Ferris.
And we're talking,
and we're like, who the heck is Earthquake Ferris? And a little kid goes, I don't know, but he goes, that's the guy who helps my dad put the ring up before the show. So I'm like, okay, that's good.
I saw that. I had to share that because there were some great memories. Now, before we went on, you said our pal Jimmy Sunshine has been watching all the Olympics.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out what sport uses an air gun.
And I don't know. You know, I don't think you have time really to peruse that paper enough to find out what sport
No,
we're
I was
about.
trying to just take a scan and think maybe it would be something that would give me an idea, like... of
course, when he told me that the table tennis match that he
shooting?
watched was about half the size of the table we're sitting at, I'm thinking... maybe Jim had a few beers before he started watching, so maybe it wasn't an air gun at all. I don't know.
But I mean, you can watch it on NBC, NBCSN, USA, MSNBC, CNBC, the Golf Channel, and Bravo if you want to watch tennis all day.
Man, I'll tell you, if you could remember all those letters all day, that'd be good too.
And then of course you have Telemundo for all soccer, and I remember one time watching I don't know if it was World Cup or Olympics or whatever, but there was a soccer match on the English-speaking channel and the soccer match on Telemundo. It was much more interesting on Telemundo. I had no idea what they were talking. They were more
energetic about it.
They were more energetic about it.
Yeah, but still, would you rather watch soccer or would you rather watch curling?
Oh, now you
big choice.
You gave me something. I'm going to have to think about, work on that one. Get back to you on that. Jeez, I don't know. I know. Years ago, and I think it was during the World Cup, my friend Mike Sahida and I had an opportunity to do the all-night show with on the Score with he was a parent at the Pilgrim. I think his name was Dan Alzamora or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we did and I know we did an update at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was reading the scores of the soccer matches, and it was like 1-0 and 0-0. And I said, I believe the only scores that are allowed are 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, and occasional, and 0-0. And as I'm reading the scores of this, Sahida's going. And some guy called up and told us, "You guys don't understand country pride."
Yeah. Well, Jim, the other day we're sitting in the coffee shop at Fanny's, and Jim is sitting there having coffee with me, and then Elias, who works at the library and is a big soccer fan, walks in, and they were talking about one of the games that had been played the previous day, soccer games at the Olympics, and I think it was Brazil and whoever they played. And Jim says to Elias, he goes, and on top of it, it was 0-0 at halftime. Shocking, he says. And I look at him and go, 0-0 in a soccer game is shocking? What was shocking about it? I didn't get it.
I don't understand. I don't understand the sport. I guess I probably would have, although I never went to an indoor soccer game, you'd have some of those that were 17-16.
Those were good.
You have that stuff off the dasher boards and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, then it was a game.
Then it was a game. This is
Hey, listen though, I gotta say the Olympics is very educational. We played softball on Friday night, and we're sitting in the sponsors bar.
Of course.
And
somehow I knew there would be a bar.
I had a few drinks by this time. They had the opening ceremony parade of countries, and I look up, and I'm the guy sitting next to me, and I go, "So where the heck is Tuvalu?" Did you know? Do you know where the country of Tuvalu is? I didn't look it up though.
No.
But I'm thinking, this is.
T-A-V-U-L-U.
I think it's T-A-V-A-L-U, maybe. I might have said it wrong. It might have been spelled T-A-V-A-L-U. And I'm thinking, how many Olympians do they have in Tuvalu? I mean, how many people do they have in Tuvalu?
Well, hey, if Jamaica could field a team for the Winter Olympics, anything,
I mean,
the infamous Jamaican bobsled team.
It's hard to have a big population when you're eating each other.
There's probably people listening right now. They're going to be searching on the internet and come up with this T-A-V-U-L Tuvalu. Okay. It's in the South Pacific.
Okay.
It's an independent island nation within the British Commonwealth.
Okay.
Its 9 islands comprise small, sparsely populated atolls and reef islands with palm-fringed beaches and World War II sites.
So besides Robinson Crusoe and Friday, who lives there?
Sea turtles. Off Funafuti Atoll. Funafuti. Isn't that, don't you have that with clam sauce, John? Funafuti? Or maybe marinara. I don't know. I think I'd like some Funafuti with some marinara. And a nice salad on the side.
I'm telling you.
The capital, the Funafuti Conservation Area, offers calm waters for diving and snorkeling among sea turtles and tropical fish. The marine area includes several uninhabited islets sheltering seabirds. So it was formerly known as the Ellice Islands.
Where did you say it's 9 islands located in what ocean is it?
It's in the South Pacific.
In the South Pacific, okay.
It sounded like a South Pacific.
It does sound South Pacific.
Sound with a name like that. Well, okay.
Definitely.
Who said we aren't informative and educational?
So I told you it was educational. Jim just filled you in on everything about Tavulu.
Thank you for you for sharing that, Richard.
Hey. Hey, why? I got a question. Just popped in my mind. This is a deep question. Why did the Cubs sign Joe Nathan and then cut him after 2 weeks?
I scratched my head about that one too, and I think Joe just kind of was a victim of the numbers.
Yeah, it seems like that. You know who's really doing it? Sounds like he's doing a slow burn because he hasn't even reported to Iowa yet.
Tommy
LaStella.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Which I sort of don't blame him.
I don't blame him.
I thought that he was, that they valued him highly, but talk about a numbers game getting caught.
Yeah, he wasn't happy when he got sent. When he got sent down, I understood. I understood them bringing Soler back. He was ready, and they were out on. They were playing an American League team, so they needed a DH in their park.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense for him, to bring him up at that point. LaStella was a victim of the numbers. Not LaStella. Nathan was just a victim of the numbers.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Because I thought, I don't know, he didn't pitch that often, but I don't think they really, he looked like he was effective the times he pitched.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's one of those things. I guess it's a pleasant problem to have for a manager.
Yeah. Not as pleasant for Joe Nathan, though.
Not as pleasant for Joe Nathan, and obviously not as pleasant for Tommy LaStella.
Now, I have to say, the White Sox, though, set a record that who knows if it's ever going to be broken this year.
I'm afraid to ask. I missed this. What was it?
The most rookie players appearing in their first game to be sidelined then for
4. Yeah, 4 of them this year.
And could you imagine, Jim, though, the guy that really not cracked me up because it's sad and funny at the same time, but thanks, John, but they had this guy, Kevin Smith, that they brought up earlier in the year to catch, and he had never been in the majors, and it sounded like he was, I'm going to say he was like 25 or 27, so he's a potentially lifetime minor leaguer. This might have been his only shot to play in the majors. He was going to start a game, and he hurt himself stretching. So the poor guy didn't. And the next thing you knew, he was on the DL, and when he came off the DL, he was back in the minors.
Oh, man.
What a about a wacky year on the South Side,
It
man.
made me think about, and I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He had a good career, and he had a good career after he left here, and he went to the Angels. And
Reichart?
No.
Or did he come here from the Angels?
Yeah, I think he came here from the Angels.
What year are you talking about?
I'm talking probably
Brian Downing?
Brian Downing, yeah. Brian Downing. Brian Downing's first game in the White Sox uniform after he came up, went for a pop foul trip, blew out his knee.
Ooh. And Brian Downing, as you say, when he went to the Angels, not only was he a good player, but he developed some power that he never had with with the White Sox.
He never had.
Didn't look like he.
Of course, he didn't. Of course, he was a catcher.
Became an outfielder.
Yeah, and he screwed up his knee, and that was his first game in the majors.
Well, did you see the other day when the Cubs, I think, were playing the Marlins? I want to say the Marlins had their catcher leading off, and I just happened to catch part of the radio broadcast, with Coomer and Pat Hughes. Pat Hughes was, talking about how rare it is for a catcher to lead off. And the one guy that they did mention
Del Crandall.
that I don't remember Del Crandall leading off.
Yeah,
but,
I do.
Craig Biggio, when he first came up, was a
That's
catcher.
right.
And now I'm not sure if he led off as a catcher. When he transitioned to second and then the outfield may have been when he led off. But it's possible that he did lead off as a catcher as well. You're going to have to prove to me that Del Crandall led off as a
Del
catcher.
Crandall, I'd have to go back. It was in the 60s. And Del Crandall was in a horrible slump. And I remember this because when we'd go to Wisconsin on vacation when I was a kid.
You listen to Braves games?
Listen to Braves games.
Sure.
Earl Gillespie. I could probably, I won't subject it to you, but I could probably still sing the theme song.
Yeah, don't bother.
No. Mm-mm. Yeah, both of them. John says we don't want to lose our listeners. Yeah, both of them. But there was a stretch where a couple of period of time he was just doing nothing. And who was managing then? It was probably Dressen was probably the manager then. I don't think it was Bobby Bragan, although it would have been something Bragan would have done.
Mm-hmm.
But he put him in the leadoff. And he went on an absolute tear for a couple of weeks.
Jim, you just brought up.
I'll have to go back in the Baseball Reference and see if I can find some.
There's a new book out about the '60 Dodgers, and I started to read. I read about 40, 50 pages into it, and they told a story. Now, Bobby Bragan, when Jackie Robinson first came to the Dodgers, was one of the guys who supposedly signed a petition, that they didn't want to play with the Robinson. And Maury Wills was telling a story about, Maury Wills was in the minors for years with no success.
Yeah.
And finally, one year, Bobby Bragan was his manager.
59.
And Bragan says to him one day, because everything else Wills did was, pretty okay. He said, you know what? Why don't you try batting left-handed? And he worked and worked and worked with Wills till he got the left-handed part down. And Maury Wills asked Bobby Bragan, he goes, Bobby, first off, I know about, the little incident with Jackie Robinson, and he said, I really appreciate what you're doing, but why are you doing this? He says, well, my name sort of got dragged through the mud with the Robinson incident, and, partially this is because you're black, but the other part is, you could be a good ball player if you do this. And Maury Wills to this day, anybody who would say Bobby Bragan is a racist or, a prejudiced, no way. That was not. It made me think, Jim, in general, how people, it all depends on your experience with a certain person. I know people who love Ronnie Santo. Wow, what a cooperative guy, what a great guy. But there's a guy in this neighborhood who I will not mention who said he took his kids to a game one day. They tried to get Santo's autograph, and Santo basically blew him off. And he's death on Santo since then. So who knows? Maybe Santo, who knows, what was going on that day. But, his impression is totally different than the majority of the people who ran into Santo.
The contacts I had with Santo were few over the years. He was one of my favorite players as a kid. And I remember going to Jewel on Irving Park Road and he was signing autographs that day because there was Ron Santo's Pro Pizza being sold, and I wanted some, and my mom said, okay, we'll buy some, and got there, and I stood in line. I got up there, and he said something about, smiled at me and said something about you get the shirt at Wrigley Field, and I was like tongue-tied because he was my favorite player. And years later, going to the Cub convention, and I always Santo talked about his health issues over the years, but in a lot of instances for a diabetic, he brought it on himself because he was a heavy drinker.
Okay.
He was a heavy drinker. And I would see him in the Kitty O'Shea's, and he'd come through, and he'd always stop. I'd say something to him. He'd always stop and chat.
Sure.
I said after, it was after one of the Hall of Fame votes. He came through, and I said, "Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?" And he shook hands, and we talked. I said, "Geez, Ron," I said, "You got screwed by the Hall of Fame."
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me, and he went, "I sure as hell did."
He had a place up in Park Ridge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of my. Well, it had his name on it. Really,
Yeah.
My mom loved to go there. If she wanted to go out on Sunday, she said, "Can we go to Santos?"
Mm-hmm. Well, I met him there.
Yeah.
And my son had his bachelor party at that restaurant there on Northwest Highway, just little side of Toohey Avenue there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him there at that. Well, probably just like all these other Dickas and all that. I mean, just a name on the front door. Are they actually part of it, or are they?
Well,
sometimes they have a piece of it.
They have a piece of the.
Yeah.
They have a piece of the action. I know, Ditka has more than a piece of.
Yeah, but he was very nice, and that was my son's favorite too.
Always very cordial.
Ron
Very cordial. Did I ever tell you about? Speaking of Santos stories, did I ever tell you about Gibbs' contact with Santo when he was a kid?
No.
Gib.
I remember Gib.
Yeah. Gib grew up in the neighborhood, and always hang around the ballpark. And he was, wherever, 8 years old, whatever, and they're, around the players' parking lot. And they knew which car was everybody's, and they looked, and Santo left his car open. He had this big Cadillac. So Santo left his car open, left his car unlocked, and they climbed in the back seat. Decided they were going to wait for Ron when he came out.
Oh, my gosh.
So Ron gets into the car, drives off, and all of a sudden they pop him and go, "Hi, Ron!" He said, "I never heard a grown man's voice get so high." "Get out of my car!" Slammed on the brakes.
Hey, you know what I saw yesterday, Jim? Did you see that? And I didn't think, this is, sometimes I could be really naive.
No.
A-Rod is going to play his last game with the Yankees, right?
Friday.
And then he's going to be, a special assistant or something?
Special advisor for 27 to pay off the rest of the $27 million they owe.
Yeah. So they...
Poor guy.
Somebody says, I think it was today, I don't remember who I was talking to, they said, well, A-Rod... Did he fail another one of those mandatory tests? And I'm like, when I read the article, I never thought of that.
You know
but
what?
Is this a graceful way of
that's a very strong possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just remember the option that Jordan was given to retire from basketball.
Yeah.
Before he got suspended.
Of course, that's never been proven.
That's never been proven, but it bears.
It seems a little odd that he did that.
It seemed rather odd for that point, and it was like, hey, David Stern said, "Listen, I got you dead to rights here. We could probably talk in 2 years."
Yeah.
And suddenly Michael had to retire, and magically 2 years later he came back.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. So that's very possible. Hey, it's nice to see. As I looked the other day at the Sox, it's nice to see that Big Game James is still in.
He reverted back to his earlier.
He went back to little game James and couldn't get out of the second inning.
You know what I thought you were going to say because Jim picked up the paper and he's looking at the box scores, but they have the standings there. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, one of the guys we have coffee with, Joe DiGiovanni, big Cubs fan and a big friend of, really good friend of my brother's, and he's telling me, my brother is telling him, they're texting back and forth, "Oh, this isn't good. What was going on with the Cubs? This isn't good." And Joe tells me as we're having coffee, I almost choked. He says, "Shades of '69," and I'm like, Joe, what are you talking about? Maybe this is the reason that the Cubs haven't won in the God knows for. I mean, Cubs fans are sort of known as notoriously optimistic and Pollyanna, but actually, I think in reality, it's just the worst. They always expect the worst to happen. And, to me, when they were on that little slide, I bought into what Madden and Epstein basically said is, hey, we got this big lead for a reason because we knew that
eventually
you're going to hit a slide.
You're going to hit a point, and it just goes without saying. I started to get those worries of '69 with that. I'll admit that myself. Okay. And I'm one of those. I'm one of those Cub fans. If you remember, a number of years ago, there was a video that came out, and I think it was describing the I don't know, whatever birthday it was for the Cubs that year, and Mike Royko narrated it, and he said, Cub fans, there's Cub fans that are optimistic. They look at the glass and say it's half full.
Mm-hmm.
He said there are Cub fans who look at that glass and say it's half empty. And then there are Cub fans who look at that glass and say, when's it going to spill? And I become one of those sometimes, going, when's it going to spill? But that game last week, when the tying run scored on a walk and the winning run scored on a wild pitch, all I could think of was that game back in '84 when Pete Rose lined into the final out off Lee Smith's back. And a ball bounced up in the air, came down, and I think it was probably Russello. Shortstop picked up the ball and threw over to first. And Harry's call on it, he was kind of stunned because he couldn't quite, all of a sudden the ball, bounces off Smith, goes way up in the air, and I think, all of a sudden he goes, wow, Steve, the good Lord wants the Cubs to win this year. And that's all that I could think of. I said, you look at this year, and something like that. Those two games where they came from behind like that, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll just sit back and enjoy it and see what happens.
Well, I think that the problem the Cubs would run into, I think no problem being in the playoffs, no problem. No. You got an 11 game lead right now. Yeah, that never concerned me, but I think the concern I would always have with the Cubs, and it's sort of the nature of the park that they play in. Any good Cubs team that we've seen has been pretty much built on guys who are long ball hitters.
Right.
And the problem, I think that problem arose, you saw it, in glaring relief in the Mets playoff series last year,
right,
where the Mets pitched extremely well, and we really don't have guys who can really manufacture runs. We're like a Earl Weaver type of team.
The three-run homer is all solves all problems.
Yes,
yeah,
and that doesn't always do it for you. Now I'll put it this way: if the pitchers stay as hot as they are, then you're probably not going to have a problem. But if the pitching is, you got a couple guys going good and a couple guys going not so good, then that's maybe not so good for the Cubs.
Yeah, and you look at, I'm just looking at the numbers and I see, 3 guys right on the top of the pitching stats, because everything is laid out here and by ERA. Carl Edwards with a 1.5 ERA. Batting average against Carl Edwards, they're hitting at 103 against him. And his whip is .61. Chapman, a 1.59, they're hitting him at 105. And his whip is .35.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what a 105-mile-an-hour fastball will do to solve your problems.
Yeah.
Hector Rondon, he converted 18 out of 22 saves before Chapman came over. He's got an ERA of 1.7, They're hitting at him at 171, and his whip is .71. Kyle Hendricks has developed into the ace.
He's you know what? I always have liked him, and he's one of those guys who's a victim of the press because he doesn't throw 95 or 97.
Right.
He only throws 90
on a good day.
On a good day. But he knows how to pitch, and he's demonstrated that since he's been here.
He's very Maddox-like. You want to take a break, John? Let's do a station break, and we'll be back continuing on our merry way.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, August the 10th, the year 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Armchair Experts with Jim and Rich.
Hey, John, can't we get a jingle for this station one of these days? Can't we get a jingle? WRHS.
There you go. I like that.
Work on that?
Yeah, can you work on that one?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Jim, I have a question for you. Do you think Joe Madden is a good manager?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah.
But when you mention Carl Edwards, who the times I've seen him has been lights out, my point would be this: most managers have preconceived notions about things, and even though Madden is a little more outside the box than
Joel Quenneville.
Yeah. But even though Madden is a little bit more outside the box than your normal manager, he still has preconceived notions. Now, based on what I've seen and what you just read about Edwards' numbers, which line up with what I've seen, is Carl Edwards a victim of preconceived notions? In other words, you have Pedro Strop holding down a spot further back in the how would you say it, in his usage of pitchers later in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Edwards will generally maybe come in if a starter's struggling. He's coming in more of the fourth, fifth inning for whatever reason.
Or sixth,
Or sixth.
Yeah.
But should a guy like Ed, and I'm saying because of preconceived notions, okay, so we have Chapman now, and Rondon and Strop bumped down to the eighth and seventh innings, as opposed to Rondon was the closer and Strop was the eighth inning guy prior to that. But should Edwards be one of those last three guys? The way he's been pitching.
I don't know.
To me, sometimes you go with the hot hand.
You sometimes need to go with your hot hand, or you also need to go with who's more available to work.
Yeah.
Who's been used a lot lately and may need a rest.
Yeah.
Or who's more rested.
And I don't want to slight Carl Edwards by saying the hot hand in the sense that this is a quirky thing. This guy looks like the real deal.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I think so too. And the kid kind of got lost in the system.
Yeah, he did for a while.
He was brought up last year and looked effective.
Yeah.
And when they brought him up again, they put him in. He's pitched well.
Now he came over in that Rangers trade.
Yeah.
Wasn't it the one where who did we send?
That was
Dempster. Was that the Dempster trade?
May have been the Dempster trade,
we got Grimm and
where did Garza go when he left here? Did he go?
Could have been Garza.
Did he go to Texas?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he went to Texas.
Okay, I can't remember. But I'm looking at all of a sudden you look at Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks' numbers. Here's a guy who, on a good day, may hit an 85-mile-an-hour fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And 112 strikeouts in 133 innings, 101 hits in 133 innings.
Jim,
and he's one of those guys that reminds me of Maddox in his later years. Because by then Maddox's speed was not overwhelming, but he would set guys up with pitches, and pitch smart, which is what Hendricks does. He will set guys up with things and have them expecting one thing, and he'll come with something else.
Yeah. Well, even you know what though? Sometimes, last night I did a 16-inch softball game. The opposing pitcher was up, and the guy who was pitching had him 1-2 count. So he threw 2 really high arc pitches that were deep, and the guy laid off. So it's 3-2, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure what's coming next. It's going to be a short pitch, and this guy's going to swing. Well, he threw it was going to reach the plate at least, but he threw a real short, low pitch. Would have been ball 4 had he laid off. There was no way he could lay off. I mean, he just was 3-2. He had it in his mind, this guy's going to throw a strike, and I got to be swinging. You know, I don't want to strike out with my bat on my shoulder. And he's swinging, and, you know, hit a I don't know what it was, but made an easy out, let's put it that way. And I said to the catcher as he was going off, I go, he really set that guy up good. He goes, you bet he did. And this is what you're talking about. You don't have to have fantastic stuff. The hitters in general, whether you throw hard like Chapman or you don't throw as hard, which is Hendricks, they usually get themselves out anyway. I'm going to guarantee you, in a game where everybody hits the ball, 16-inch softball, the pitchers, they get you out because you're stupid. I have to say, I know that the batters will always say pitchers are stupid, but the pitchers in reverse will say batters are stupid, and to me, they're more right than the batters. The batters will get themselves out most of the time if you let them. If you just give them a chance, they'll get themselves out.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Maddox would talk about setting somebody up with a change-up. Change-up outside, a change-up inside.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe catch the corners on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And, get the guy to a two-strike count or 3-2, and this guy's thinking, well, all he's been throwing is change-ups to me.
Mm-hmm.
He says here comes another one, and Maddox and probably Hendricks is the same way. Suddenly unloads an 88-mile-an-hour cutter or fastball.
Yeah, and it looks very fast.
Yeah, and it's suddenly this looks really fast, and this guy's timing is completely off.
You know what else happens, Jim? Though, and I understand it because I find myself doing it. I remember reading a book, and they talked about Allie Reynolds, Vic Raschi, and Eddie Lopat in their days with the Yankees and how good they were. And Eddie Lopat was a lefty with, not a hard thrower.
No.
But they would say, like Yogi Berra, say if Yogi Berra caught him or whoever caught him at the time that he was playing, they'd say, now this guy would start to hit the outside corner. And eventually he was missing the outside corner, but he was still getting the strike call because he made the game so easy for the umpire to call. He was always around the plate. And so then his strike zone, and I've read the same thing about Maddox, started to expand. The umpires just love calling those guys' games. And I'm going to sit here.
They'd get done quick.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to sit here and tell you, when a guy, you would think it would be the other way around, but when a guy throws strikes, he's going to get more strikes. And a guy who's wild is not going to get. I mean, that's just the way it is. Yeah, when people say, "Well, geez, the officials favored the better team," I'm going to sit here right now as an official and tell you that is true. It's not true because you're sitting there figuring this team should win and the other should lose. It's. I had a game a week ago. A Norwich resident, Mike Alonji, who's a fantastic softball player, was in the game. Every ball that was hit to Mike, he made my job so easy because the man's got a fantastic arm. He doesn't hurry the ball and he doesn't rush it. And he beat every runner by a step. But I'm not talking about a step where the runner's foot is up here and then I'm talking about a clear step.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, hit every ball to this guy because he's just making my job that much easier. But that's what when I say that the better teams are going to get the calls, that's what I'm talking, because you know what? Now you're in the umpire, in this case, is in the same rhythm as that team is. Okay, I don't think it's anything more or anything less. And the other team, they may have no rhythm at all. Or if they get something good going, it's almost like, well, where did that come from? You're not ready for it. So I totally buy into the good teams get the calls, but there's a reason for it. It's a human thing, but it's, hey, they got you in their rhythm. I mean, it's almost like you're with them, and that's a fact. And it's not cheating. It's not being deliberately in favor of one team or another. It just happens. And it's a really interesting concept, and I think it's true.
That's an interesting point, and I never really gave that a thought, but I think I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
That you kind of get drawn into the way you kind of get drawn into the way they're playing.
You do. I mean, you do.
And get them right, boys.
Yeah,
and we'll. Do it right, boys, and we won't have any problems today.
That's a fact.
That
is a fact.
And you have to follow the old adage of the umpire. I can't remember who it was said it, but a famous umpire said, "He ain't nothing till I say so."
Yeah, yeah. But it's the I had a game last year. It was a playoff game. I was umpiring the bases. Same guy, Alangi was playing, and the short center that he plays with, they play together on several teams, and they're good. There was a ball hit the short center, and Alangi covered. And I had never seen this before. I've seen it on TV, where they talked about the phantom tag, the
right.
good footwork.
Right.
Well, I swear to God, Jim, and I'm not making this up. I didn't make it up in my head at the time. Alangi gets the ball, and they complete the double play. And I rang the guy up at second out, and the guy up at first, and I looked, and I'm like, he didn't tag second. But his footwork was so fast and looked so good, was so smooth. So after the game, I went up to Mike, and I said, Mike, you did a really good job on that phantom tag. I said, you never touched the bag. And he looked at me, he says, you know what, Rich? He goes, and if you would have called him safe, I wouldn't have BITCH.
Yeah, you wouldn't have said anything anyhow.
And you know what? A lot of the good ones are like that. You know what? The good thing about good teams and good players is they know that they can overcome, say, a call that goes against them or whatever.
Do you get a lot of guys barking at you for calls?
Very few.
Playing softball like that?
But it has nothing to do with, I make as many errors as any other umpire.
Right.
But what I think is the reason that I don't get the static is, as the game goes on, the players realize I'm with them in the game. I'm not just over them. I'm a part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell them when I appreciate what they do. If they made a good play, a smart play. If maybe not so much on play in the field, but say last night I had a guy up to the plate. He was the pitcher he was batting, but he was the pitcher. The ball wasn't super long, but it was, right on the borderline. I called it a strike. He didn't say anything, but I looked at him before, and he wasn't going to say anything. I said, I owe you one. I said, I missed that. The guys, and, the catcher on the team that's in the field hears that. The batter hears that. And I'm sure, I'm not saying they talk about it when they get back, but they, that maybe gets discussed. So the point I would make, to me, too many officials, like, I'm over the game. I'm God. Well, I'm not God, and I make mistakes.
You're not Country Joe West?
No. And you know what? There's guys who look at it that way. Jim Kelly, when we have coffee, the guys ask him, because Jim comes out and watches the games I umpire a lot of times, and they'll say, hey, does Rich ever, if he misses a call, do the guys ever say anything? He says, yeah, once in a while. He goes, well, what does he do? And Jim says, well, he takes his brush out of his pocket, he bends over, he wipes home plate, and he says, guys, I hear what you're saying, but the call's not going to change. And that's the end of it. I firmly believe, Jim, that when you see, say, a major league umpire get into it with a player, most of the time, in my way of thinking, it's the umpire's fault. You know what? You have a choice. A guy could bark a little bit. You can give the guy a short explanation. If he continues barking, you can walk away. But how many times when a guy gets heave-hoed, you don't see the umpire walk away? He continues the conversation.
He continues the conversation.
So to me, it's the umpire's fault.
Right.
And so I don't have that. I've never been nose-to-nose with anybody. I've never thrown anybody out. The closest I ever had to anything like that is I had a play that I blew. I anticipated a call. I called the guy out, but I was making the safe sign. And the guy was an older guy who was in good shape. And I just thought he was going to run and beat the play, but he was not as fast as I thought he was. Well, as he came across, he's yelling at me, "You should go back to playing," blah, blah, blah. And he's standing in the field, and I was listening to him because I'm like, I understand where he's coming from. Okay, guys get upset when you make the wrong signal, but verbally call them one way or the other. I'm up with that, okay? I made a mistake. But he went on for a little bit. Okay, I'm listening to it. He wasn't swearing, but he's yelling. But he's standing in the field. I didn't say a thing. Finally, his manager came up. He said, "Get off the field," and took him out of the game. The next time I had the team, this guy was catching. And I said, "You know what, Jimmy?" I said, "I apologize." And I explained to him what happened. He goes, "Don't worry about it. It's not a big thing." I mean, and he said, "You got the call right." But he said, "I was just upset because somebody said, hey, he made the safe call, and, now he's out."
Yeah.
So I really believe the big thing I think you have to do is everybody realizes you're in control of the game, but you can't do it with an iron fist. You got to do it a little, you got to do it in a way where you're more a part of the game. You're not over the game.
Yeah, there was this, it was very interesting to bring that up because it reminded me of a story. And 35, oh gosh, it was a game, I think, if I remember the story, it was Brooklyn and the Phillies. So we're talking back in the 40s, late 40s, and Granville Hammer was the base runner, and Pee Wee Reese was the shortstop. And there was one of those plays down at second base, and the umpire, who I can't even remember, threw his hand up in the air and signaled out and yelled "safe."
Mm-hmm.
And both of them jumped up immediately and got into his face.
Mm-hmm.
And what is he? What is he? Is he safe? Is he out? And he says, the umpire looked at him and he said, "Pee Wee, he's safe. Granny, you're safe. But 35,000 people in this ballpark think you're out.
Oh, well,
Granny, you're out."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he took control of the game.
Yeah.
And the game and the call was respected, and that's the way it went.
Yeah.
Do you think, all right, going on to that point, and do you think the use of instant replay in the challenge calls in Major League Baseball is good or bad?
I think in baseball, it's better than it is in football.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the nature of the thing is the rules haven't changed in baseball. The complaint I have with the instant replay in football is so many of the instant replays are predicated on things that have changed over the years. Mm-hmm. That's what aggravates me, is the runner down by contact. I mean, that is totally irks me. But in baseball, things happen so quickly that it's easy for an umpire. Hey, I had a guy. I was at the Forest Park tournament a couple weekends ago, and my good buddy Bill Levy was there with me. And there was a close play, and the umpires were having a rough weekend that weekend. In my opinion, there was a lot of blown calls. So Bill started asking me. He said, he was talking to Ferk one day when Ferk was umpiring. And he said, "Ferk, on a close play at first, how do you determine that?" And Ferk told him, "Well, I watched the runner's foot hit the bag, and then I listened for the ball to hit the first baseman's hands."
Which is what most would do, I think.
And I thought about that, and I said, "Well, Bill, I got to tell you, I understand what Ferk's saying, but that's not what I do." And he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I couldn't really explain it, but I said, I see the whole picture. I mean, the runner the ball coming. I guess I'm judging the speed of the ball. A lot of times you'll know the ability of the first baseman. Is he a guy who might tend to bobble or take his foot off the bag? So the way I look at it, I see it more as a composite as opposed to foot hits the bag, ball hits the player's hands. So it's. I guess the point is, though, there are so many really close plays in baseball that I think it's more beneficial. I mean, it's really hard sometimes to tell. Did a guy trap it?
Yeah.
Did a guy hit the bag before he completed the double play?
There was I watched the Sox game the other night against a Saturday night against Baltimore, and there was a play there, and it was Narvaez hit this pop fly down to third baseline, and Machado went back, and from the initial view, it looked like it hit off the edge of his mitt and landed foul, and they challenged it. And you looked at the video and looked at it from several different angles, and they took their time on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And you're dealing with a situation then too where you got the bases loaded.
Yeah.
The call was the ball was foul.
Mm-hmm.
They challenged the call, and you looked at it, and you looked at the ball really looked like it just missed Machado's glove and landed on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it on the line, and you could see the mark on the line.
Okay.
So when they looked at that, they reversed it. It was a base hit for Narvaez and a run scored.
Okay.
So I mean, that's one time when I looked at it and I saw it was it meant something. You look at a lot of the things in pro football, and I'm inclined to agree with you that it becomes overdone.
Yeah, it's way overdone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much. And
do you think in the instance of football, is it something that the coaches should challenge, or should it be like college football, where college football will say, well, this one's going to be reviewed?
No, I think the coaches' challenge is I like the coaches' challenge because at least it becomes a strategic
thing. Okay.
But all this, I got to tell you, I personally too, especially sideline passes and whatnot, I don't know even with the replay that they get those straight. These guys are very athletic, and I think that there's a human sort of reaction that says, man, this guy, what a play he made, and we're going to give him every benefit of the doubt, and you know what, he's inbounds instead of being out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe really it's pretty questionable. You can't really, I mean, I look at the thing however many times they show it, and I'm like, I don't know, I can't really tell.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at it 5, 6 times, slowed down. You still
Mm-hmm.
can't tell.
And you still can't tell. Kind of leading us into football. A couple of things. What did I see here? Nice article from Michael O'Brien in the Tribune about the junior quarterback at Solario, and that's going to be Ridgewood's first opponent.
Yeah.
Quincy Patterson has received scholarship offers from Illinois, Indiana, New Mexico, and Penn State.
Yeah, that's what I heard. He's 6'4" or something, 210.
Yeah, well, he was his goal this summer. He's 6'4". His goal was to get to 230, and he's at 226.
Oh, well, that'll be a load for Ridgewood. We get to see that game, Jim.
We get to, that's our first game of the season.
Yeah.
Last Friday in August, John. Get your schedule.
Jim, you know what? I wanted to...
John's just going to me, I can't make it.
John can't make it?
26th. The Friday.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we won't be doing football that night.
I don't know. Jim,
John, we'll talk afterwards.
Okay. Before we get into football, because I wouldn't interrupt that except for I see the time is getting short. I wanted to say and I understand why the papers do what they do in terms of covering things. But yesterday, I pick up the paper, and all within, not even a full page of the paper there, but a half a page, they had A-Rod's retirement, Ichiro Suzuki got his 3,000th hit, and Jim Furyk shot a 58.
Yep.
And there might have been something else in there.
That's a pretty amazing item there, Jim Furyk shooting at 58.
But it was all within a half a page. It was on the half a page where, if for those who read the Sun-Times, you got the page with the baseball standings.
Yeah.
Okay, so half the page is box score and baseball standings. The other half a page is like, the Sports Wire. And I'm thinking there's at least three items there that deserve
right here.
Yeah, 3 items that deserved a full article, and look and see, Jim. There's Furyk's score,
Furyk gets
Ichiro, and A-Rod.
And they're taking this all they're doing is taking this off the Sports Wire. Yeah. They're taking an article right from the AP, and A-Rod gets half the half page.
Yeah, you
got about a quarter page.
Yeah,
and the rest of it is split between Ichiro getting his 3,000th hit, Furyk getting a 58. Wow, that's amazing. That is just amazing. And Denny Hamlin beating Martin Truex to win the Sprint Cup race at the newly paved Watkins Glen International.
Okay, and no disrespect to Denny Hamlin winning the race, but there's 3 significant sports news story that have really almost virtually no coverage.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
Yeah, I got more information. From looking at somebody at Facebook, telling me about it. Matter of fact, I think it was our pal Roger Badish.
Oh, okay.
May have said something about that. Watching it, saying the man with the world's ugliest golf swing, Jim Furyk, just set a PGA record for the lowest score. He said, and I find that amazing. Now, I'm trying to remember, was it Art Wall that shot the 59?
I heard, actually, I just heard there was maybe 4 or 5 people who've shot a 58. But I think Furyk himself shot a 59 previous to this.
I think he did.
But they named some old, and I don't know if it was...
No, his was the first time to get a 58.
Okay, so there might have been 4 or 5 guys who shot a 59 prior to that.
Yeah.
Well, now there's a good example of what I'm talking about. Wouldn't it have been appropriate for, if you had a proper article about this, you would hope that the person who wrote it would include those names of the guys who shot the 59s.
Well, if it was cut out for the purposes of getting it into the column.
Well, what I'm saying, Jim, is that if this was the old way of doing the news, that you'd have a full story about that. The final round of that tournament.
Your golf writer would have an article,
right? And that's all I'm saying. I mean, and in that article, he would mention the people who had shot the 59. It's sad. I mean, and I'm not criticizing the papers. I think they're doing what they have to do, but it's just a sad thing.
Yeah. I'm just, and we don't have too much time left to get into it, but I saw an item this morning that Jay Cutler says the Bears, as far as training camp, the Bears have got to stop being so stupid and fighting.
Oh, I saw that on the. I didn't read any of it, but I saw that he. To me, I thought the coaches always liked fighting.
Yeah, well,
maybe Jay doesn't.
Maybe Jay doesn't because there's too many injuries, and he said, for God's sakes, we've already lost our center, not because of a fight.
Yeah.
Although they did say it was a non-contact injury.
Well, I think he was in a drill. Yeah. And he went down,
he went down wrong.
Easy that can happen.
That can happen. So he's done for the year, and now they're trying to figure out: is it going to be Ted Larson? Is it going to be Cody Whitehair? Is it going to be who else did I see? They also have Cornelius Edison on their roster, Amini Silatulu, who started 28 games at guard for the Panthers in the last 4 seasons, he practiced Thursday for the first time since he had his own ACL surgery.
This is not like an easy position to plug somebody into.
You just can't. No.
I always found it amazing. I thought when most teams went with the quarterback under center, the job was tough enough. But to accurately get the ball back to the quarterback and then
be up and block,
get up and block, and you usually either you have somebody who's huge or somebody who's very fast that you have to block, neither of which are easy. And those guys, you can't. What killed me when I read the thing about Hronis Grasu is they keep referring to him as the undersized center. I believe Hronis Grasu is between 290 and 305 pounds. So he's undersized.
He did put some weight on this year. Patrick Finley said he had everything going for him in training camp: a stouter body, a starting job, and the trust of his teammates and the support of a mentor, which is important. Is important in a position.
I had 2 questions when I read that article, though. I always wonder, like a guy like Will Montgomery, who they had last year, they always have an article about when you get the guy, but when he sort of drifts off into the ether, you have no... I don't know if he's in the league or retired or what. So that was a veteran center that at least you had...
You could plug in.
You had at one time.
Yeah.
And the other thing, they got Manny Ramirez, and then he decided to retire. But is he somebody who might consider unretiring, especially if he knows he's got the job for sure? But it's interesting. I mean, there's guys. How many guys could you, if you really think about it, and just about the Bears, guys that the Bears got that were veteran guys, maybe got hurt like Montgomery did, or had played 1 year, and then they're gone, and unless you happen to be watching a game and it's a team that they ended up with and they mention their name, you have no idea where they never report where they went to.
And in some cases you don't know where they went to if they were just released, unless you follow the wires closely and see somebody gets picked up. Or you see, well, he's a free agent and they didn't sign him, but so and so has picked him up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the more you see it, and you'll hear some people complain about it, they'll say, well, why don't they hire this guy as a manager or coach? They keep recycling the guys that are already coaching, And my response, or players, they're interchangeable, it almost seems, between one team and another. Mm-hmm. I think that's very much the way it is, but the reason is whether, say if Robin Ventura got canned by the White Sox and then amazingly was hired by another team. I mean, here's the thing, though. He's got friends in other organizations. He's a known quantity, whatever you think about him. There's going to be, I'll guarantee you, there are going to be people in other organizations who think highly of him just in general. So, and I'm not saying that, I'm not using him as an example that's what's going to happen with him. But this is why you see a guy who was, maybe marginally successful, gets fired, and boom, he's got another job.
Yeah.
So he knows somebody in another organization. They think he's a good baseball man, good football man, whatever. And they get rehired.
We don't want nobody sent.
Yeah.
That's the old deal. All right. Let's wrap it up. John, wake up. We're going to finish. John nodded off in there. I just wanted to make sure he was alert. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to do this again next week. This is the first of 3 in a row.
Whoa, man.
Holy
you totally screwed me up. I didn't even know we're doing this today.
Yeah, I woke you up, didn't I?
I think it was a better day than, I think it was a better show than, we just, you know what? We had a show like we've talked about doing, like when we used to have our show prep, or our laughingly called show prep.
What we laughingly referred to as show prep.
We just let it fly and get a variety of subjects. Today, I felt like it was one of those days.
Yeah, it was one of those. We just come in with.
We just had a conversation.
We have absolutely no idea what we're going to talk about, and it just starts to happen. You get some ideas from the paper. Sometimes I scan Facebook or Twitter and see if there's anything, and sometimes I on the drive in, I hear something, but I was in Norwich, so I didn't drive in.
Okay.
And I didn't even turn the radio on this morning.
Well, I found it to be not to say that our conversation is stilted normally, but this is more like a real conversation. You would say something, or something would pop up, and we just go with it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it was interesting because you gave me some things to think about, especially when you were talking about your umpiring and your officiating with that, and it kind of led to questions that sometimes I've thought about, and I hope somebody else has thought about. John, have you thought about it? Just agree with me, John. John says, yes, I did. Okay.
Okay.
All right,
we better go.
We better wrap it up. All right, thanks for listening. We'll do this nonsense again next week for another hour and change of two guys trying to figure out what they're going to talk about. And thanks for listening. We'll see you then. Until that time, we are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, August the 10th, the year 2016, on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS FM sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Ziflik of WRHS FM Norwich and John Chikanda of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, August the 9th, the year 2016. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone.